We off?
30 seconds of carefree bliss.
Oof, like wind in your hair carefree.
Oh, like using Clorox Disinfecting All-Purpose Cleaner in the home carefree.
Yes!
Like dog slobbing on the coffee table and cleaning it with Clorox Carefree.
He's on a roll now.
Spit toothpaste on the faucet.
You got it. You got it.
Peanut butter on the light switch.
Oh, spritz, spritz.
Spritz, spritz. Clorox, man. Clean feels good.
Okay, we're back.
Use as directed.
This is the Long Island Report on 107.1 WLIR. Using common sense, talking Long Island issues. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Good afternoon. This is the Long Island Report. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. With me is my esteemed colleague and good friend, Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse is the Vice Chair of the State Republican Party and the County Chair of the Suffolk Party. Jesse, you were missed last week. Welcome, welcome, welcome back. How are you feeling?
It's great to be back. I missed all of you. I had a short bout of the flu, and I lost my voice. But I heard that you and the former Mayor Peter Vallone did an admirable job. I thought I was going to lose my spot after I heard the exchange at that point. But it's great to be back here with the listeners of Long Island to talk about the topics of the day that everyone's reading about this morning as we open up our newspapers.
Well, let's begin with the border crisis, which is getting worse and worse. A couple of things about the border crisis that are clear. One, even Hochul and Adams are trying to send some sort of messages finally to Biden that this is a national catastrophe and it's not just Texas's problem or Arizona's problem, New Mexico's problem or California's problem. It's a national problem. It's seeping all across the country. And with Abbott and DeSantis sending the busloads of folks or the flights into Martha's Vineyard in New York and Chicago and the District of Columbia, it's sending the message that, in fact, it's a national crisis. These people in New York and Martha's Vineyard, Chicago, they've been complaining. Just imagine what the poor border towns in Texas and the other western states have had to deal with the influx of hundreds of thousands, indeed millions of people illegally coming into the country. Jesse, what do you say?
I think it's the ultimate state of hypocrisy. For the case of Kathy Hochul, I believe it's just political expediency. She was very proud that New York City and New York State is a sanctuary state. They want to open up and use tax dollars for illegal immigrants. But it's amazing. That all changes when border states like Florida, New Mexico, Texas, Arizona, when they're dealing with it in real time, when they say, okay, fine, let's take these individuals, let's properly and safely transport them to sanctuary cities, that they have laws in place to take care of them. It all changes when that happens. And what we're seeing right now in New York City is the failure of sanctuary cities, the failure of the Biden policies on the border, the failures of the far left progressive left's policies on the border, because basically now we have a nation without laws. We have a nation without laws, a nation without borders, because we're not enforcing our own guidelines. And who are people being hurt? I think the ultimate state of hypocrisy is Martha's Vineyard, who very, very proudly said they were a sanctuary city. And
welcome to Martha's Vineyard. Now get out.
Welcome. Yeah. Now get out. Exactly. If you can't provide us services, you should not be a drain on us financially, economically, to our budgets, and God forbid, you should not be part of any crime problem that may be in there. Because what we're seeing is, again, the left wants to focus on the tragic stories, but the reality is what's the majority of the people coming in? Not the majority, but what is coming along with illegal immigration, and what's coming in with no borders? Sex trafficking,
fentanyl,
human trafficking, fentanyl, everything. It's a pipeline for cartels. It is a pipeline for just a human tragedy of endangered, of human trafficking, sexual trafficking, and such. It's amazing that you don't need just basic common sense. You just need to be a human being to realize that by the policies that have been set forth by the Trump administration had put a blunted stop to fentanyl, sexual trafficking. He focused on sexual trafficking and human trafficking. He focused that more than any other president did to that point. He was very loud about that, about pedophiles and whatnot. And now it's okay. And then, of course, the hypocrisy. If you're a cop, a firefighter, a nurse, a doctor, if you're anybody who wants to work in business, you better get you're mandated to get your COVID vaccine, but you can just run over the border. No vaccines, nothing. It's ultimate state of hypocrisy. And
it's dangerous, Jesse. Right, it's dangerous because, look, dangerous. It's a health crisis because you know what diseases these poor folks are coming with.
Absolutely.
You don't know who they are, whether they're cartel members. You don't know. The terrorist watch list has gotten close to, I think now the latest number, Jesse, is close to 100 people that we know of that got in were on the terrorist watch list. How many does it take to have a terror incident in this country?
It only took about 30 in 2001.
I mean, it's just terrific. And I had lunch. I was part of a small group that had lunch the past Monday with Ambassador John Bolton, the former United States ambassador to the United Nations and a senior advisor to President Trump. And we were talking about this border crisis. And we talked about the dangers to America because this is clearly unsustainable. He said that. And you know who also said that it's unsustainable? We just can't do the same old thing because that's the definition of insanity. And the same old thing, Jesse, is keeping the borders open and then dispersing them into our country. You know who said it was unsustainable? Bill Clinton, former Democratic president of the United States. He said it was unsustainable. And if you go back and you look at the history books, even Barack Obama, at one time, both as a United States senator and as president of the United States, said the same thing, that you just couldn't do that. Open borders is not a policy that could do anything but doom the future of this country, Jesse.
Exactly, Your Honor. And that's why I think that you can see that right now playing out in the streets of New York City and playing out in communities of Westchester where, you know, the Biden administration is secretly moving illegal immigrants on their own. But now, God forbid, a state governor does that to protect their own citizens. It's a different story. But you are seeing the hypocrisy first of Kathy Hochul, who says, again, welcome to New York, that she is for illegal, you know, she's pro illegal immigration, except now when it's a financial, health, and security crisis for the city of New York. And then you have Mayor Adams, and I give him credit. You know, he tried to deal with this. He tried to turn the tables on the two governors, and it failed. It failed mightily.
Well, I like Eric Adams personally, and I know him, and I've had the occasion to have dinner with him and to sit next to him at events. And he's a smart guy, and he really cares about saving the city. His problem is he's facing a hostile state legislature who won't help him and a governor who hasn't helped him. And the only thing that's really changed in the last day or so with the Biden administration in terms of trying to firm it up is saying that they're going to do some sort of remain in Mexico or stay in Mexico policy with respect to the Venezuelans. Okay, that's a small step. But what about all the other people from the dozens and dozens and dozens of other countries, Jesse?
It should be across. Don't pick and choose countries and such. That's just going to give the bad actors of the world a path to go to. You know, this is the problem with politicians that are, you know, like Joe Biden, that don't have any true philosophical spine. They just go with the wind, with polling, and they're being bullied by the far left progressive Democrats in the Senate chamber in the House of Representatives. And let's not forget, Mayor Adams, is better than what we had for the last 8 years.
No doubt.
De Blasio.
No
doubt. He's better than that. He calls out these people, but he's got a hostile city. He's a
city council.
City council as well.
City council is,
you know, I think, and you can see that even in the heart of liberalism and progressivism, that those seats are changing. Republicans gain a seat in the city council that they never should have had before, and they're going to do that. So that's a good bellwether for us. November 8th coming forward. But the thing is, this is a major crisis. It's a major crisis for New York City. It's a major crisis for New York. It's a major national crisis. It has economic, health, and security implications.
Well said.
And all we're doing is seeing the Biden administration put their head in the sand and hoping beyond hope that something takes care of itself.
Well, Mayor Adams declared a state of emergency for New York City. The real question is, what does that mean? What does a state of emergency mean when you're still a sanctuary city? You still have New York law that says that anybody who comes here, you have to give shelter. I mean, really, where are you going to put all these people? Put everybody in the Waldorf Astoria? I mean, where are you going to put these people? Adams has now said he's going to disperse them throughout the 5 boroughs in New York City. Well, that's nice, but what neighborhoods? You're going to have 10 cities, so what's the sanitary conditions and the weather conditions? You're going to put them in hotels, you'll destroy the hotels. You don't know who you're putting in there. You don't know what their culture is in terms of health or sanitation or cleanliness. I mean, this is serious business. You just can't throw them into business communities or residential communities and say everything's fine. How are you going to take care of the hospitals, Jesse? Hospitals are overrun as it is, and the schools are overrun. And as you always point out, who's going to take care of these hospitals and the schools, and who's going to pay for this?
Exactly. And it's the taxpayers. It's the middle-class taxpayers. It's the ever-shrinking middle-class taxpayer that's going to be stuck footing the bill for these failed progressive programs over and over and over again. But unfortunately, you can just see that you have Governor Hochul, you have the Congress majorities in both chambers, and you have a president that's just, it's just a deaf ear. They don't care. They want to do nothing. Actually, I wonder if it would be politically expedient for Biden, even if he did not believe in it, that he simply, seeing how he's going to get overrun in the midterm elections, as every president does, but in this case even more severe, why not leave and put in place some of the Trump or all of the Trump border policies so that it gives his candidates in a toss-up district at least a talking point of action as opposed to inaction and such. But they're not even that smart politically to try and even dare to utilize policies that worked from the previous administration.
Well, let me just point out to you, it's just been revealed within the last couple of days. Remember that whole incident at the border with the Haitian immigrants, and allegedly the immigration officers were whipping these folks? It now turns out that was an absolute blatant lie. And not only was it a lie, but the people who were carrying that narrative, which is the President of the United States, the Vice President of the United States, the Secretary of Homeland Security, they all knew it was a lie when they went through that. Can you imagine that? They had a narrative which had to feed to their base, to whip people up, literally, to go out and be outraged by the unkindness of people who were saying you have to secure the border. All these agents were doing was doing their jobs. No one was whipped. It's not demonstrated. They had emails now that demonstrate that they actually positively knew it was false, and that Mayorkas went out there, stood there with the President of the United States, the Vice President of the United States, and the three of them ranted and raved, and then Biden says, these people are going to be punished. We're looking into this. This is serious business. We can't allow this to happen. This is outrageous. This is anti-humanitarian. Please give me a break. You knew it was a lie, and you went out and you said it, and you speed forward the divisiveness in this country, because that kind of narrative destroys national unity, common shared values. And that's a very dangerous phenomenon. And the President of the United States is a failure in many ways, but the failure of this president to try to unite this country and just to spin falsehoods and false narratives just to bolster his political base is reprehensible. Kevin has just given the sign. We're going to take a break. This is Judge Richard Weinberg. With me, happily, is my good friend and esteemed colleague, Jesse Garcia, the chair of the Republican Party out in Suffolk County and the vice chair of the state party. I said before, Jesse, welcome back. We're going to take a short break, and then we'll continue on the Long Island Report. Stay tuned.
Subtle results, still you, but with fewer lines. Botox Cosmetic, onabotulinum toxin A, is a prescription medicine used to temporarily make moderate to severe frown lines, crow's feet, and forehead lines look better in adults.
Effects of Botox Cosmetic may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness may be a sign of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Don't receive Botox Cosmetic if you have a skin infection. Side effects may include allergic reactions, injection site pain, headache, eyebrow and eyelid drooping, and eyelid swelling. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Tell your doctor about medical history, muscle or nerve conditions including ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects. For full safety information, visit BotoxCosmetic.com or call 877-351-0300.
See for yourself at BotoxCosmetic.com.
It's the Long Island Report, using common sense, talking Long Island issues. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia on 107.1 WLIR.
Welcome back. This is the Long Island Report. I am Judge Richard Weinberg. With me is my good friend, esteemed colleague, Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse, there's this issue that doesn't go away, and it's getting worse as the days go on. Why don't you talk about it with our listeners?
True. I mean, we're seeing a dramatic increase in crime. It's been very clear that it's directed at two things. Number one, the advent of the Democrats and Kathy Hochul's cashless bail program that is, a revolving door policy of hardened criminals. They come in, they get out, and they commit more crimes against victims. We're seeing it all over the state. And no more so can we see it come literally right to our doorstep, in that there was a shooting in the front yard where a crime scene was the front porch of the Republican gubernatorial candidate, Lee Zeldin. His two daughters, Michaela and Ariana, were doing their homework while Lee Zeldin and his wife were doing a campaign stop. And there was a shootout amongst three individuals, one of which was 30 feet. A bullet was found 30 feet away from where the two young ladies, 16-year-olds, high schoolers in William Floyd schools, were doing their homework. They were very, thankfully, they're like their mom and their dad, very strong persons, well prepared. They locked the doors. They ran upstairs. They went in, locked themselves in the bathroom. One of them called 911. The other one called their dad, and they were able to get through that. But think about this. How can Kathy Hochul say that cashless bail and the stats have shown that crime is actually not peaking, it's actually going down, it's being controlled, when we've had a gubernatorial candidate 3 months ago, an attack on his life, and now literally crime comes in and public safety comes to the doorstep of the gubernatorial candidate, yet the governor still turns a blind eye. She embraces cashless bail. She embraces criminals. So if we can't keep, and this is easy, Governor Hochul has a phalanx of security around her. She's in a bubble all the time, protected by armed police officers of the state police, and then the supported police in the different counties that she's in. Average Americans, average New Yorkers, we have to fend for ourselves. And what does she want to do? She wants to take our guns. She wants to take our ability to, press charges and keep bad people in jail while they await sentencing or await their trial. She is literally handcuffing cops and judges and letting repeat criminals, have shootouts in our suburban neighborhoods. And this one took place on the doorstep of her opponent. There is no better demonstration that under Kathy Hochul's tenure and her reign of terror, crime has risen exponentially, and we're not safe. You know what's amazing? I think to dovetail into this, we had him as a host, and we have to have him, as a guest before. Former Governor Patterson was on WABC, the Cats Roundtable, earlier this week, and he said, despite what transpired in the 70s, in the 80s and the 90s in New York City, for the first time, he does not feel safe walking in New York City or around this state. And that falls at the foot of Governor Hochul and her Democratic partners in Albany.
Well, David Paterson, Governor Paterson and I sit next to each other at least once or twice a week on Cats at Night. And David is a common, when John Catsimatidis introduces us, he introduces David Paterson, Governor Paterson, as a common sense Democrat, Judge Richard Weinberg as a common sense Democrat. And David and I see the truth, and we see it clearly. The attempt by the state legislature in writing these laws, by the way, it's not just the so-called bail law, Jesse, that's caused a problem. It's to raise the age law where you have to take these people and push them into family court, which is not nearly as serious a place as the state Supreme Court. Let's be clear about that. It's the don't press the diaphragm. So how are cops supposed to get the defendants under control when they're making the arrest? It's the attempt to get rid of qualified immunity, so you chill the willingness of police officers and law enforcement to engage people that look the other way. You have the opening up of their administrative files and violating the former protections of civil service laws to let anybody get into the personnel records of police. It's all of that. And more. Every day they wake up in the legislature and they come up with another bad idea. It's let them out. Let you reach a certain age, they want to pass a law. Let people out in jail because they've been in jail too long. Well, it depends whether they've been in jail for too long based on the particular facts and circumstances of what they did and whether they've been rehabilitated or not and whether they're a threat to public safety. And what Hochul and the legislative leaders of this state, when they keep saying they fixed it and they did not fix it. Number one, judges do not have the authority to hold somebody in dangerousness in this state, Jesse. We're the only one of the 49 states that doesn't have that power. That's number one. Number two, the federal system allows judges to do it. So we are really the outlier on that. That's the first point. Secondly, and this is what has to be made very, very clear. There's a list of crimes we cannot hold people in under any circumstances, no matter how dangerous they are and how many times they've committed crimes, so-called recidivist problem. That's a big deal. And even if it's a crime that's on the list, Jesse, where you can theoretically impose bail, what a judge has to do is he has to use the least restrictive means to guarantee that the defendant comes back, and has to do an assessment whether they have the financial ability to make the bail payment. So fundamentally, the ability to set bail is illusory. Understand that. It's illusory. It doesn't exist, even with a limited number of crimes where they do have the right to do that. And this is serious, and it has to be taken care of. And they keep saying it's a national phenomenon. It's worse in New York because dangerousness is not something a judge can look at. And crime is going up all over the country. Major crimes are up. Felony crimes are up. Recidivism is up. Grand larcenies, petty larcenies, burglaries, carjackings, felonious assaults, they're all going up. Gun violence is going up. Go to the subways. People being thrown in front of subway cars. They're being slashed. They keep saying they want congestion pricing, Jesse. They want congestion pricing because it's a way of getting money to feed to the MTA because the MTA is mismanaged. Guess what? Ridership is down. It's 40% of what it was. People are going to go back on the subways, Jesse, when it's not safe. Are they kidding or they mean it? What do you say?
They're not going to go down the subways. Part of the reason why the ridership is down is because you can't be safe. You're taking your life in your own hands if you go on the subways. We had the former chief of staff of the city of New York discuss that he was training his daughters to go use the subway, decided against it because it became unsafe. But you're absolutely correct. The entire criminal justice overhaul of here in New York, done under Kathy Hochul and the one-party rule of Democrat progressive.
And Andrew Cuomo too. Remember the original bill. Cuomo, the original bill was Andrew Cuomo when he was governor.
And she had an opportunity to fix it. What she did nothing. She put lipstick on a pig. That's what it is. That's what it was in that bill. And that's what the problem is. So while Kathy Hochul is in her protective bubble, New Yorkers are forced to fend for their very safety while they go about their normal lives of dropping their kids off at the bus stops, taking them to little leagues and soccer and public school events. They're even just going to work or just going home, just to try to get home to their families. Everyone's in danger now because of these policies. And they, instead of telling us politically, oh, we'll do this after election, that is nonsense. We'll
Trust me. I trust no one until they get the job done.
Exactly. I trust your actions. Your actions were inaction. You doubled down on cashless bail. You doubled down on protecting the rights of criminals at the expense of victims and the middle-class families of New York. That's what Kathy Hochul has done. That's what every Democrat state legislator has done. And that's what every Democrat that's in office that's in support of these issues has done. There's a way to do this. You want to, it's a little bit different, but they changed the criminal justice system at the federal level. And how'd they do that, Judge Weinberg? And they did it with President Trump in a divided Congress. What did they do? They held hearings. They got input from the experts, prosecutors, victim advocates, law enforcement personnel, and they made changes. And a Republican president hated by the left and hated by Democrats was able to successfully change the criminal justice system to keep the citizenry, the public safe, to give additional rights to criminals so that people without means could get out on bail so that they could defend themselves. And it's a fair criminal justice system, not the one that we have here in New York, which, Judge, you know this. You've done the law. You've been a lawyer your entire career. You've been a judge. This is nothing more than a political entry on a piece of mail or a voter contact issue. This is just, placating to a small base of the Democratic progressives. That's what this all is.
That's very interesting you say that, because Biden just came out and he said he was going to pardon all the federal prisoners who were in prison on marijuana possession. Now, that's very cute. That's a gimmick to try to bolster his base for the midterm elections, Jesse. But let me point out the reality. It's called plea bargaining. You have drug traffickers, you have marijuana dealers in federal prison, and they pled down to possession. They didn't plead out to dealing, to being traffickers in drugs. They gave them something to plead down to so they would get a conviction. That's the dirty little secret. They're not in there for simple. It's not somebody with a joint walking down the street who went to federal prison, Jesse. It's a guy who was a dealer who pled down to more serious charges just so they could get him off the streets. And that's what everybody in the criminal justice system knows, who actually knows the criminal justice system. Whether you're a law enforcement, whether you're a prosecutor, whether you're a defense counsel, or whether you're a judge, everybody knows how these cases are resolved. This is all about plea bargaining to get them off the streets so they cop out to a lesser included offense. And that's the deal. And by the way, talking about marijuana, I know everybody looks at this as a great revenue grab for the states with all the legalization. Number one, if you're driving a car, Jesse, and you're stoned on grass, it's just as dangerous as if you drive drunk. Okay? Accidents increase, Jesse. They increase. Colorado is a perfect example. The number of motor vehicle accidents increased when they legalized marijuana. Additionally, if you smoke marijuana, if you're not 26 years of age, your brain is damaged. Your brain is damaged because it impairs that. And the same diseases you can get from smoking a cigarette, like cancer and emphysema and heart attacks and strokes, you can get from inhaling the marijuana. So who's kidding who? Marijuana is a very bad drug. And it's a feeder drug, Jesse, to larger drugs, whether it's cocaine, whether it's heroin. Kevin has given us the sign. We're going to take a break. This is Judge Richard Weinberg. With me is Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Stay tuned. We will be right back.
It's the Long Island Report, using common sense, talking Long Island issues. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia on 107.1 WLIR.
This is the Long Island Report, and we are back. This is Judge Richard Weinberg with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse, I want to switch topics and focus. President Biden, in a fundraiser in New York City to Democratic donors, talked about what's going on in Ukraine and warned that we're facing Armageddon. Now, in my humble opinion, that's foolish talk and it's dangerous talk. From the very beginning, Putin has tried to cow the West and the United States into trying to back off and protecting Ukraine, a sovereign nation where there was an illegal invasion and try to annex the territory of that sovereign state and to assassinate the duly elected president, Zelensky. And the fear is that if you keep saying nuclear war, nuclear war, nuclear war, nuclear war, people will lose their courage and they'll stop backing the Ukrainians in their righteous fight against Putin and his war machine. And Putin's war machine is not a military operation against armies. He is bombing hospitals, schools, train stations where people congregate, people fleeing to try to find safety. He kills them on the road. And the Ukrainians very smartly just took out a piece of a major bridge that united Russia to Crimea. And he has the audacity of all things, Jesse, to say that the Ukrainians are engaged in terrorism. Can you believe that?
It's unbelievable. He's committing war crimes. His military is being exposed for what it is. It is a paper tiger. And our president falls right into it. You know, it's amazing. I remember on 4 different occasions during the 2020 presidential campaign that Joe Biden said on at least 4 occasions, and recently as he's president, he said the words of presidents matter. It's amazing. He uses this in a fundraising appeal at a fundraiser. It gets out, and he's not vilified for it. The mainstream media covers him up. There are some that are poking at him, and even they can't ignore it. But for the most part, could you imagine if Donald Trump did the same thing? If he said if instead of but, it was a major front page story on New York Times, and it went on for column inches on how bad of a president he is. Here he is stoking the fears of an aggressor like Putin. He is becoming Putin's mouthpiece in the West. He is actually now emboldening Putin.
Of course,
he's magnifying this. So now it's not just Putin, the madman, saying it. It's the leader of the free world that's saying it.
And so the natural
and
the natural consequence of that is, you know, the game is not worth the candle. Get out. Don't support them. Leave them alone. Look, the Ukrainians can win. They can push,
and they are demonstrating that.
Right, but they need certain things. They need long range artillery. Okay, they need air cover, whether it's a no-fly zone, Jesse, or enough artillery to knock Putin's planes down, or they need their own planes, and all of this has been refused by the Western Alliance, so-called Western Alliance, and under the so-called leadership of Biden. As you've said correctly on other occasions, what they've done here, this administration, is too little and too late.
Exactly. And you know what? Former Secretary of State Pompeo has said it clearly. He has even said we were slow to give them the material they needed, and then we shortchanged them on the type of material they needed to defend themselves, the people of Ukraine. Now it is time for all of us to give the Ukrainians the weapons that they require to do the fight that they're doing. They took out a bridge that was marveled. It was a piece of engineering marvel that Putin 3 years earlier had lauded as the strength and the prominence of the Russian government under his Russian administration. It's a major supply line to Crimea and also into Ukraine. And it was these innovative freedom fighters from Ukraine who successfully took that out. And how does a petulant, unhinged leader react? He bombs women and children. He bombs hospitals. He goes after civilians. He is now trying to use civilians as a tool.
He's trying to break the will of the people of Ukraine.
Exactly. And it's wrong. And that's where we need, as democracies, freedom-loving countries, republics, to come together. And it's a combination of the United States. But under the leadership of the United States, this should be being undertaken. It should be undertaken by the EU and NATO.
Well, that's exactly right. And I'll tell you what the real problem is. And by the way, I watch Tucker Carlson on Fox regularly, and many times I agree with him. But I'll tell you where Tucker is dead wrong. he says, why are we risking nuclear war for Ukraine? So what? What's the big deal? Hunter Biden is a guy who did business, okay, and they've covered up doing the business. Joe Biden is the one who threatened the attorney general and the government of Ukraine that unless they changed it when they're coming after the partners of Hunter Biden to go after them criminally, he's the one who said we're going to yank American money from them. And he's just done with the Saudis the same thing. He said, give me a break. Wait till after the election before you cut off the oil supply. So they impeached Trump for that. All right? They impeached Trump for that because he's using the power of the office to get something for political advantage. And where's the outrage against Biden for doing the same thing now with the Saudis? And it shows a mindset that this man does not understand the consequences of what he's doing. He doesn't understand that he has to be very careful, as you correctly point out. Language is important. Messages and language count in sending out the understanding of what's going on in this world. And he doesn't understand history. History is very, very clear about the dangers of appeasement. Neville Chamberlain appeased Hitler. First, he gave him the Sudetenland, was part of Czechoslovakia, and then he did the Anschluss with Austria in 1938, and then everybody said, well, that'll do it. And Neville Chamberlain comes back, flies back, and says, we'll have peace in our time. And next thing you have an agreement between Russia and Hitler's Germany, a non-aggression pact, which enabled them to go into Poland and divide up Poland. So the lesson of history is that appeasement doesn't work. You have to fight these people when you're strong. You have to show the will to do it. You have to work with your allies who have the courage to risk their lives and their fortunes to go forward and do this. And you cannot appease. So all due respect to Tucker Carlson and Joe Biden, learn the lesson of history. Language counts. Carlson, your language on Fox is not responsible language. You're telling Putin it's okay, the game is not worth the candle. That's wrong. Joe Biden, you're using the wrong language. You said a minor incursion really didn't matter. He said at the beginning, and that encouraged Putin to go in. Terrible, terrible, terrible.
It truly is. And who is listening to this language? And you know what? I think they're listening to Joe Biden more than our enemies and the people around the globe and the national leaders are listening to Joe Biden more than perhaps maybe they're taking their cues from Tucker Carlson, because there's a couple much more that Tucker Carlson's right on. But the thing is, what are our allies who have been on the fence or have been reluctantly providing arms to the Ukrainians when they hear the president of the United States say this? They hear him say this. It's going to create confusion. It's going to create a pause. And with every pause and delay, there is more gains for Russia and its military forces as they go after civilians in breaking the will of the Ukrainian people. And, you know, it's the Ukrainian people, but these are freedom-loving individuals, human beings. You know, they believe in their country like we believe in our country. And I keep saying this. We allow this to happen, you know, in Ukraine. It's not going to stop there. It's China into Taiwan, and then incursions more and more. We'll get into Venezuela later, where Iran is buying more property, and creating its own little possibility of a Cuban Missile Crisis there. It's that surrounding of America is going to take place and continues to inch a little bit further every time we delay, and we have fumbled. First, the delivery of assistance and aid militarily to Ukraine, and now we're fumbling on the messaging and the direction of this country to our allies. Whether it's minor incursion or Armageddon, we are empowering and emboldening and giving a larger voice, amplifying the voice of a tyrant like Putin on the world stage.
That's right. And what you're doing is you're telling the axis of evil, which is Russia, China, Iran, Venezuela. You're telling these people it's okay, we're weak, we're not going to stand up and fight and protect civilization or Western values. We're fair game. Just take us apart, cut by cut, one cut after another after another. We'll wake up, as you correctly say, we'll wake up one day and you're going to have nuclear weapons facing us from Venezuela. And you want to talk about Venezuela, and we have a couple of more minutes in this segment. So tell me what your thoughts are about Venezuela.
Well, I just see, we're talking about, America is now going hand in hand to the Saudis, begging them not to cut production through OPEC. And they're dealing with Venezuela, a totalitarian communist country that can't sustain itself. And we're asking them for oil. All we needed to do was reverse failed policies from January of 2021. Let's get the Keystone Pipeline up and running. Let's start issuing permits for drilling of natural gas and oil in our federal lands. Policies of the Trump administration, put politics aside, get America back to being energy independent. Let it lead to now at least us not having to deal with regimes that are problematic or are our enemies. We are feeding our enemies, and we're emboldening our enemies.
And we're undermining the resistance of brave people fighting tyranny.
And we're undermining the American people. We were energy independent on December of 2020 under the Trump administration. 21 days later, that changed, and it changed for the worse. It led to supply chain problems. It led to inflation. It's leading now to where the Biden administration is championing that gas per gallon is now $3.90 on average, as opposed to $5. Except it was $1.80, $1.90 on the day Donald Trump left office. This is an easy fix. But the problem is Biden will not make the changes that are necessary because he does not have the people's back on this. He is protecting the political class of the Democratic Party and the left socialist progressives in his party that basically are wagging the dog.
All right, we have to take a break now. Jesse will be back. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Long Island Report with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, and I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. We'll be coming back for our last segment of this week's show. Stay tuned.
Support comes from ServiceNow. We're for people doing the creative work they actually want to do. That's why this ad was written and read by a real person and not AI. You know what people don't want to do? Boring, busy work. Now with AI agents built into the ServiceNow platform, you can automate millions of repetitive tasks in every corner of your business, IT, HR, and more, so your people can focus on the work that they want to do. That's putting AI agents to work for people. It's your turn. Visit ServiceNow.com.
It's the Long Island Report, using common sense, talking Long Island issues. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia on 107.1 WLIR.
All right, we're back on the Long Island Report. This is Judge Richard Weinberg. With me is my good friend and esteemed colleague, Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse, at the close of the last segment, we started talking about the absurdity of not being energy independent and what the costs are of the so-called Green New Deal. Now, this Green New Deal, to me, is ideological nonsense. We are not ready and able to be sustainable with solar and with wind. You need to have oil, you need to have natural gas to have a sustainable economy. You're going to break down civilization unless you have energy, and they're putting these absolute mandates that you can't buy an oil-driven car with in the state of New York or California after 2035, and incrementally they're going to be freezing out these cars, so you have to get an electric car. The problem with electric cars, Jesse, is that you don't have the charging stations, that you need fuel oil to get them started, that they're dangerous because if you have a fire in one of those cars, it's a major disaster environmentally because what comes out of the fire is a pollution that can't be taken down by water. You need special chemicals to do that. When the EMS workers come to rescue you, you can get electrocuted. If you have your car parked in your house and there's a fire, it can destroy your whole home. and there are a lot of fires developing, and yet car dealer after car dealer after car dealer, the manufacturers now saying we're going electric, we're going electric, we're going electric. So what do you say about all that, Jesse?
I just think it's amazing. Let's just point to California. They were telling people with their rolling blackouts that, ironically, their electricity is done by fossil fuels, but, forget about that you couldn't charge your electric cars. So now you're stranding commuters, you're stranding students, you're stranding small businesses, you're stranding the average American in their homes because California is telling them you can't charge your car. It is nonsense. The technology is not there. We're not saying that moving to electric cars is not the way that it should be. It should be. The market is going to determine that. We see major automobile corporations moving forward to that, but they're doing it systematically and they're doing it methodically as to make sure they catch up with technology and such. We don't have the technology to do this. Right now, as you pointed out, it's a public safety problem. There is an issue with the availability. If it happens in California, it's going to happen in New York. You can't just take an electric car, pull up to what will now become an electric pump station instead of a gas station, and 10 minutes later roll out with a full tank of gas. No, it takes time to fill up to recharge these cars.
And it's physically dangerous, by the way. And Dr. Mikolos has talked about it on Cats at Night. It's physically dangerous to be in those cars because you're being exposed to the radiation. And by the way, he also pointed out, and catch this, when they had the hurricane floods in Florida, and what was happening? We had the chief financial officer of the state of Florida on Cats at Night. He pointed out that because of the salt water, and Dr. Mikolos has confirmed this, because of the salt water, Jesse, that causes shorts, which can cause explosion in those cars.
Absolutely. So again, all we're saying, and what people are saying, more reasonable common sense individuals are saying, like yourself and myself, is that there's a movement towards that. But let's make sure that we don't let our philosophy outpace our technology. Let's do this methodically, the right way. Let's make sure that we have the public safety issues addressed. We have the consumer issues addressed. We have the issues of delivery of replenishing of electric cars taken out. That's why hybrid cars work. Hybrid cars work when they switch back and forth, and that's a good plan moving forward. But the other thing that bothers me is these mandates, these arbitrary mandates. Who the hell is Kathy Hochul to say that, okay, by 2035 or 2030, we're not going to allow any more gas-powered cars to be sold, right? Who is she? Where's her degree that says that new construction in the state of New York will not include natural gas? Well, where's you're a politician. You're the last person I'm going to believe, and especially when you're going after my job as a laborer or in labor or whatnot, or the American dream. We have to stop with this, because when politicians are making these philosophical decisions, they're leading with philosophy and not technology and science.
That's very, very well said. And I like freedom of choice. That's why I love America. If I want to get a gas-driven car, I should have the right to go to a local dealer and buy the car or lease the car if it's gas-driven. And if I choose a hybrid car, I should have the right to do that. Or if I want an all-electric car, I should have the right to do that. But why are politicians who have no technological expertise but are just playing a narrative which has nothing to do with the ability to make it workable in real life, whether it's heating our homes or driving our cars? And what are you going to do about, by the way, how about airplanes, Jesse? What are we going to cut out airplanes?
Exactly.
And by the way, let's say you buy a car and they're very expensive. You buy a car and the battery goes. What the replacement cost now is to get a new battery for a Tesla? It's $25,000. Who has $25,000 to get a new battery?
Yeah. It's unreal.
Well, which is a good segue to inflation. Let's talk about inflation. I mean, Biden just went out there and he said, unemployment's at 3.5. Pounds his chest with a great deal. And then he gets the Treasury Secretary Yellen to go out there and say the economy is strong. What dreamland are these people operating in? Is inflation under control, Jesse? Is the economy good? I mean, what do you say?
inflation is out of control. The economy is sputtering because of the philosophies and the policies of the Biden administration and Democrats in Albany and in D.C. I mean, he's trumpeting 3.5% unemployment. We know that they stopped reporting with people who do not repeatedly do not come on, try to get another job. But at the same month, inflation was at 8.2%, which is above expectations. So think about it. For those of us who are working, who have a job, we've lost a month's pay because of 8.2% of inflation. And there's nothing to be done that. Any recovery bill that they've done, there has done nothing to do this. It's just spread money and flushed the economy with wasteful paper and more money that's devalued the currency. It's gone out of control.
Yeah, at least, by the way, catch this. The latest reports are, and this first starting to do the calculations, you probably have $500 billion of this federal money, which has been victimized by fraudsters, scammers.
Exactly. But what a surprise there. This is the same people who did, they'll go after the small mom and pop stores, but all these corporations that have all these lawyers and accountants on standby and on hire to protect them, their actions are just forget about it. And the process was set up to give people free cash. They wanted Americans to be beholden to the government. They wanted to say, we're from the government, we're here to help. That should scare the hell out of anyone. As President Reagan said back in 1980, that should scare the hell out of us because there's not even a short-term benefit to it. Because right now we're dealing with the beginnings of a long-term consequences of the government giving repeatedly free cash and telling people to stay home. You don't have to work. You're don't have to pay your rent. We will make you our version of the nanny state. And that does not work in America.
No, the only system that works to make a people grow and develop and have opportunity is a capitalist system. Socialism
Absolutely.
has failed wherever it's been. Communism has failed wherever it's been. Even when the fascists, the right wings, control the economy, they have failed too. Central planning does not work. The free spirit of opportunity and entrepreneurism is what drives opportunity, development, chances for everybody, and wealth for everybody. And Reagan had it absolutely right. Now, the last thing I want to talk to you about before we have to sign off for this week's show, we have a midterm elections coming up. And I consider that, Jesse, one of the most important elections of our lifetime because we have to have balance and power. We have to have checks on the excesses of the left-wing ideologues who control the state houses, the governorships, and the Congress and the presidency. I think it's time that we start paying attention to this. I'll also submit to you, it's time for Biden to get off the stage. It's time for Trump to get off the stage. It's time for Hillary to get off the stage. We need new leadership in America if we're going to unite this country and not have it divisive again. What do you say?
I think you're right. If there is a critical election, and I know politicians like myself and elected leaders like myself say this almost every election, but literally the direction and the prosperity, we have a choice. Prosperity with balance, checks and balances, and a split government that works for the people, or we can go down the same road that's taking us down to $5 a gallon, supply chain problems, groceries that are almost 10% higher than they were 2 years ago. Unemployment of where it is. We have a choice here, and the American people are making that choice. And whether they're doing it quietly or they're doing it with a simmering action of changing the government with their hands and their abilities. That's what I think we're going to see. I think we're going to see a surprise. We're going to see a new governor, a Republican governor for the first time since elected in the state of New York since 2004. We're going to see a Republican House of Representatives and possibly a state change in the state Senate and growing numbers of Republicans in the Assembly. And of course, I do believe the U.S. Senate is poised to possibly change there as well. The best thing for America, for the American people, is to have a clash of ideals and a great debate so that we can get true results that come from compromise and come from working together as opposed to one party dictating this.
Well,
It's important we do this.
That's exactly right, Jesse. Let me end by quoting a great president of the United States, Ronald Reagan, or paraphrasing him. Are we better off today than we were a couple of years ago? And the answer is absolutely, we're not better off. And are we safer today than we were a couple of years ago? It started unwinding during the summer of 2020 when the Democratic Party and the left wing said, Antifa, go out and destroy the cities. When Black Lives Matter did a shakedown operation and they took hundreds of millions of dollars from the corporations and they shut down cities and they destroyed cities. Are we better off today economically in terms of safety, domestically? And are we better off in terms of our national security? The answer is no. Signing off for the Long Island Report, this is Judge Richard Weinberg on behalf of my good friend and esteemed colleague, Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. I hope you've enjoyed this show. We look forward to talking to you again and next week. And Jesse, once again, welcome back. It's wonderful to have you back.
Great to be here. Thanks so much.